Now then. Oh, I guess I should. Well, you guys can see that really well, right? Yeah. Bright. All right. I might turn the lights off for the when we look at the movie, but anyway, let's talk about course 10. This hopefully is not entirely new information. If for no other reason than you were supposed to look at it over the weekend, I think it's pretty straightforward. Like occasionally I'll have students that have issues with course 10. I mean, look, this is our class. Click on it, and granted, you might be doing this on your phone, but it's not that different. This is the first page of our class. Here's the syllabus, which you should all look at. You don't. I got so many emails over the weekend about when shit was due, and I'm like, look, I know there's a calendar, because I made it. I know that. But I also know there's a syllabus. If you're not sure, look at the syllabus. Look at the syllabus. If you knew how long it took me to make that syllabus, you still wouldn't care. But I'm telling you, it's murder. Just look at it. Aside from that, most of the time we'll be in content, right? So for today, this is what was assigned. We're going to look at it. There's your rubric for your first paper. If you're curious, we might look at it at some point. We're not going to do that today. I believe this is due for next time. You get it. There's dates. There's the videos that I'll post every day. Oh, yeah, that's our homework for next time, so we'll talk about that at some point. All right, let's look at the prompts. All right, rhetorical analysis. I keep getting caught. I'm gonna go back over. 2 to 3 pages, 25% of your grade. Pretty heavy on the weight. I'm gonna argue pretty light on the length. Some of you won't agree with me, and I'm like, 2 pages? This is double space, man. Come on. You can make it happen. And what I mean by that is, some of you will really short shrift me on the length. 2 pages is not you appear at the top of the second page. That is 1 page. 2 pages is bottom of the second page, or like a line, like, I'm not gonna be a stickler about it, but go ahead and fill up that second page. I think we can all do it, okay? And we'll talk more about it as we go. We're not gonna dive into like papering today, but when it comes around, I don't not mean that length requirement, okay? Some of you are pretty funny about that. Source text, the social dilemma, we're gonna talk about it. Hopefully you watched it over the weekend. And it's due the 9th of September. I already mentioned that last time. What the paper is, we actually started this last time. If you remember, we talked a little bit about rhetoric. I think I made a joke about how I might have murdered your teacher and taken his place, which is still entirely possible. No investigators came to see me over the weekend. So, but it's all about presentation, right? It's all about what am I trying to convince you of? And normally it's not just one thing, normally it's a couple things. And then how am I going about it? What kind of appeals am I making? How are they operating upon you as part of the audience? That's what we're doing in this paper. You're going to write an intro at some point and a conclusion, but the bulk of your paper, which we're going to start that process today, is going to be the body of the thing. Taking out little specific pieces of evidence from the text, okay? What is this doing? How is it working? If you can manage that, you're more than likely going to do fine on this paper, okay? That's really it. Any questions at this stage? Any at all? Excellent. Okay. What we're going to do now, super briefly, might have to group you guys up. I don't know how to do that. I'm really bad at this. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2. It's visible by 2. Do that. God. Hell with it. We'll partner you up. All right. So look left and right at your table and find a partner. I think that's pretty easy for most of you. Some of you are very far apart, and that's its own thing. I think we can navigate it. Your instructions to begin with are very, very simple, okay? And this should not take long. All I want you to do with your partner, you'll take turns. I think we can do that. Describe your weekend to your partner. Just describe your weekend. That's it. All right, take a couple minutes. Go for it.
read rhetorical.
Alright, let's bring it back together. Again, some of you are busier than others, that's fine. That's just, good for you, I guess. Alright. If someone wouldn't mind, we're only going to do one or two of you, okay? If someone wouldn't mind, could you summarize your partner's weekend for us? So not yours, your partner's. There's a reason we're doing this. Can anybody just sum up to the class your partner's weekend? Yeah, there in the back? Yeah, go for it. With your chest, please.
Okay, she said that it was a very chill weekend. Her roommate went back home, so she had to do dorm to herself.
All right, slow down real quick, sorry.
Yes.
Does the roommate have two M's? Does anyone know? No? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
There was a fair amount of sleep.
Is that it? Okay. Are you his partner? Did he miss anything important? Did he miss anything less important? Really? Okay. That's a pretty chill weekend. Okay. We'll get one more. Who doesn't mind, again, summarizing your partner's weekend? So not yours, your partner's. Go for it.
Let's see, you said that you went home for the weekend because you didn't have class on Friday. And then, let's see, you worked on Saturday, worked on Sunday, and then came back.
Okay. That's pretty accurate?
Yeah.
Did she leave anything out? It may be important.
It's really.
Okay. Now these are similar in their, I guess, oddly numbers of details, right? They're pretty different, right? I think we would all easily characterize this first one as a chill weekend. This one doesn't really sound that way, right? Work. So for instance, I don't know, we could ask some questions about this one, we certainly could, but this one's a bit easier. Looking at this summary, do any questions immediately jump out for this second summary for any of you? Because I have one. I'm curious if you guys do. Yeah. It kind of changes the whole thing, right? Well, so I assumed like he's a server or something with that kind of, maybe. But we don't know. He's like, actually, dude, I'm an undertaker. It really backs up over the week. I'm out there all day.
Hold on. Wait, are you the one that works at Oliver? Yeah. Okay.
I'm saying that's a very different weekend. That changes the whole story, doesn't it? When it comes to summary, okay, one of the things you actually have to consider is not just concision. That's shrinking it down, okay? That's important. But also significant detail. Is it significant that he did all these things? For sure. This is the skeleton of his weekend, by the sounds of it, okay? But you gotta put some flesh on that skeleton in certain places. I'm so fucking happy that guy's right outside our window, by the way. There he goes. Tearing ass. You get it. Where do you work? It's Olive Garden? Yeah. Okay. Now we have a little fuller picture, especially if you've ever worked in the restaurant industry, which some of you have, or at the very least you know somebody, or you've been to a restaurant. Like you can see it now in a way that you couldn't when it comes to his weekend, right? For the other one, a similar question I could ask is like, where do you live? Is it like a dorm or an apartment, or it's like a dorm? Okay, where like you sleep 10 feet apart, if that. Okay. So here again, we have a fuller picture. Her roommate left the dorm. You can see it now in a way where you were kind of just envisioning it before and taking some guesses. That matters. That does matter. Okay? The other thing I want to stress for you real quick about summary. These are facts, right? If in our description of the Olive Garden weekend, we got all of this, and then maybe toward the end she launched into, and he came back because, I mean, I just figured he couldn't take any more of that job, you know. That's not really fact anymore. What is that? Conjecture, I suppose. Yeah, it's a little more basic than that. We can talk about conjecture in a second if you like. What is it if she takes this information and goes, well, obviously he's coming back because he just can't do it anymore? Or he was looking so forward to his studies like we all are.
Yes. Opinion.
It's an opinion. Good. We'll roll with that. Opinion plus evidence is argument. Oddly enough, opinion, maybe with not great evidence, is what we would call conjecture. Okay? But it's still an argument. It's just kind of a shitty one. What we're after in this class, in these papers, is argument. Okay? And I started that way because a lot of the time when you guys hear that word, you think of what? What's an argument? No? What's an argument? Look, I grew up in a broken home. I saw plenty of them. What's an argument? Yeah! You didn't mortify, but you bought the lizard, right? Like it's kind of, there's a lot of this. That is an argument. Classically speaking, that's not the only kind of argument. That's just what we're used to. An argument is just, here's some evidence, I've formed an opinion based upon that evidence, and I'm going to try to prove my theory to you. I'm going to make an argument. That's what this whole class is about, okay? So when it comes to this movie, and we're about to look at it, you won't have to listen to me for a second. We're going to do our best to think about what the movie's after, like in a grand scheme kind of thing. But more to the point, we're going to look at specific scenes, specific moments. Oh, they did this. I wonder what they're trying to convey or convince me of, have me think about, right? And how can I talk about whatever evidence I've chosen to prove that, right? Okay. To begin with, can anybody kind of sum up the movie for us? What happens? You do a similar thing to what we just did to Weekends.
It's a documentary about how social media like impacts everybody's daily life and like how everybody's addicted pretty much.
Yeah. You got a little more specific at the end, right?
Yeah.
Good. Here and then there.
The Social Dilemma is about how social media is not designed for the health of the user.
Human consumption.
It's designed, to hold their interest as long as possible.
And why are we holding that interest? Just to help you out a little bit.
So that they can see more ads and
It's about making money.
make money.
Yeah, for sure. They're in the back.
Probably pretty much what he said, but
Okay.
making an algorithm to
Yeah.
the winning algorithm that's going to keep the most and longest
Yeah.
attention and making you more addicted.
At one point, the guy from Mad Men, I don't know if you've seen this show, he's the algorithm. They really try to paint this picture, it's you versus like a supercomputer. And I mean, I don't know a whole lot, I don't know nearly as much as these folks do, but if that's at all true, it's like, dang, you don't have much of a chance, do you? So we talked a lot about social media in our summary, and addiction and monetization and all these things. I think there's one important piece we're missing from our summary. Does anybody have an inkling what that might be? We left one thing out of our summary. I don't have mine right now because it's right there.
Phone.
Yeah, that's legit a game changer, and I stress that because you guys don't know a world without it. Okay, I remember when I got my first iPhone. I was in college. I know.
I already know when you were born, but that's still age.
Yeah. But I mean, we had social media before that, importantly. Okay? But there's something about, and they make this point in the film repeatedly, there's something about access, right? You have it all the time. It's just right there. That's a very different thing. All right. We're going to watch two scenes today. They're both from the very beginning of the movie. For those of you on the internet, hopefully watching this, I'm going to try to give you timestamps. I might forget. The first bit we're going to watch is from the very beginning of the film until about 3:30. Okay? Again, that's not for you. Sorry guys, you're part of a sad TV show. About 10 of these people are gonna watch this. But up until 3:30, because I have to cut this part out of the video if you end up watching these in the future, because the robots on YouTube will flag it for copyright and take it down. So. Anyway, all I'm interested in, especially on the first day, whenever we look at something like this, okay, we're gonna watch a scene, we're gonna talk about it, anything that stands out to you. You might even, I'm not, I know I sound crazy, you might even take some notes. If anything at all stands out to you, that's really interesting. I hadn't noticed that the first time I watched it, or now that we've talked about it, I see this guy's doing this, right? Anything at all that stands out to you. You don't even have to know why right now. I would jot that shit down. All right. All right, I'm gonna turn the lights on real quick. We're gonna talk about that. A little peek behind the curtain. I had to beg my wife to make sure my kids weren't on Netflix today. Like, whatever you gotta do, make sure they're not on Netflix. Because the kid that had a fever, they want him out one more day just because, we're careful these days. And he's fine, but he has Netflix. So we could get kicked off is what I'm saying. Eat it for octonauts. Anything you guys noticed watching that scene? Yes?
They started off with a quote.
From who? You might know who that is?
A Greek philosopher, looked like.
Playwright. Good guess. It's definitely Greek. Sophocles famously wrote tragedies. Many of them are lost because he's very dead. One of them is called Oedipus, the story of Oedipus. Guy who sleeps with his mom.
Yeah.
And cuts his own eyes out. Very fun. What about that? Let's talk about that. That's the very opening of the movie, right? You get like some credits, basically like production company, all that stuff. You get this Sophocles quotation. Why do that, do you think? Does anybody remember it, first of all? I don't remember off the top of my head.
Me either.
Introduce a vast something to the mortals.
I'm going to paraphrase a little bit.
Like without consequence.
Without a curse.
He was Greek. He wasn't talking about consequences. Here's like mortals without a curse. Yeah. Matter of fact, I want to talk to you guys about quotations anyway. Let's talk about this one. And for the record,
Sophocles.
Sophocles. You can almost never go wrong, ancient Greeks. That's a hard E on the end that'll help you pronounce the rest of it. That's true, by the way. Anyway, there's all kinds of ways we can talk about this quotation, okay? Before we do that, I want to talk to you about how to set it up at all. This is your homework, by the way. Not this quotation. Use a different one. Does anybody know some of the paraphernalia we need to set this guy up? Some of these are easy. We need quotation marks. Good. Okay. What else might we need? Does anybody know? It's okay if you don't. I can tell you. But I'm just curious. We need to cite it. Good. Does anybody know how? That's a trickier question.
I think it's just, is it from one of his plays?
That's a super fair question. We're not worried about it.
Okay.
To answer your question, and you're not interested in this part, to be super, super technical, you could cite Sophocles, something like quoted, and then give the citation for the movie. We're not going to go that hard in the paint. All I'm interested in is citing the fact that this appears in the movie. Okay? How do we do that?
Sophocles, comma.
Not a girl. That's it.
Is that the director?
That is the director.
Okay.
And if you're never sure, there's two ways to find out. Anybody know what those ways are?
Google.
Google. Or you can look at the credits. Yeah. Cool. So there's our quotation. We got the marks. We got the Parenthetical, by the way, some of you were taught very strange things, and I can't go back in time and change it. I'm sorry. When you're citing a movie, I don't need timestamps. I don't need any of that nonsense. Whoever told you that, they were wrong. They were like really wrong. You just need the last name of the director. That's it. Easy. And then a period at the end. All right. We need one more thing to set up this quotation. Does anybody know what that might be?
A sentence around it.
We need it integrated into a sentence. Good. Does anybody know what that sentence might entail?
In the opening,
Context.
Good. Context. All right. What is context? And you were starting to do it, by the way. Does anybody know what context means?
it means you get a, what was going on prior to the quote.
How did we arrive at this? Yeah. Context matters. If, when you're exchanging sort of play-by-play of your weekends, right? If your partner said something like, and I found a body, you would ask, where? Because context matters. If you were like, I was in the parking deck on the square and I found a body, that's a different story from, I work as an undertaker and I found a body. It's like, bitch, that's your job. That's not impressive. It's different, right? Context matters.
The other one was impressive.
Impressive in the classical sense. That's another word we kind of misuse. In like the hundreds years old, it made an impression. It changed you, right? Now we're like, you got hot dogs, that's impressive. Like it's not. Anyway, different conversation. So context for this quotation. You started to do it. What did you give us there?
In the opening.
I'd go a little bit harder. The very first thing we see, right? What other information might we need to set up this quotation? At the very opening of the film, what?
We're introduced to
Yeah. Do we need any more information about it? I think there's at least one more thing we could say about the quotation.
From Sophocles.
Good. The very opening of the film. Or how about
Orlowski quotes Sophocles. Then we can remove the parentheses.
So we got our two vital pieces of information. The film immediately opens. Like again, context matters. It'd be a little different if it wasn't from the jump. You see what I'm saying? But you're like, you didn't even know who he was. You're like his Greek philosopher, which is a pretty good guess. Honestly, if you were walking around Greece and you weren't like a slave, you were probably a philosopher. They didn't have as many jobs back then. I looked him up to make sure. Sophocles' big invention was he involved a third actor in his plays. That's how old he is. He's like, guys, we can have 3 people. But it was groundbreaking at the time. That's how long ago it was.
Oh, he's been dead so long.
He's very dead. He's very dead. But again, that's part of what we're going to talk about with rhetoric, by the way. But it's like you see it, and what does it do to you? And we could talk about this if we wanted to. Remember when the quotation comes up, there's like a beat, and then it's like Sophocles. Like, oh shit. That wasn't just Keith. That was like a guy, right? And you may have heard of him, you may have not, but just that name, you're like, he's probably important. He did something. So it gives like a weight to the quotation, right? All of a sudden it like means a little more. You had your hand up, by the way.
Me?
I thought so.
Oh, well.
I made that up.
Yes.
It's all good. All right. So let's talk about that. I started it. But what I want to sort of offer you here is, you can talk about the quotation, and we will, but you can also usually involve the context. Sometimes the context matters a great deal. I think here it does. But it's up to you guys. Where do you want to start? Anything up here is fair game. What do you think?
Ethos?
Oh, the triangle. Okay.
I don't know.
No, it's
That's my
fine.
first
It's
thought.
no. It's we'll start there. That's okay. What does ethos mean in English? Do you remember?
Ethics.
Yeah.
Claim to credibility.
Good. Okay, so we're going to talk about credibility. Let's do that. How so? In what way?
It's trying to attach like the credibility of Sophocles to the rest of whatever you see.
Yeah. He's this ancient Greek. Maybe you look him up. If we're being honest, maybe you wouldn't.
I did.
Well, you didn't have time. You were in class when we were talking about it. Thinker's pretty safe. He had thoughts.
They're worthy of history making.
He's like a historical figure. That adds to his credibility, right? Again, you may or may not have heard of him, but if you even Google him, it will come up with a whole lot of stuff, and you're like, he's probably important. What does that do? Start with the evidence. What does that do to the credibility of the quotation itself?
Makes it important.
Makes it more credible. Like proves to you and me. The quotation, maybe you thought it was cool, maybe it didn't. But I think the road we're driving down right here in terms of argument, as soon as Sophocles kind of rolls out underneath, you're like, oh shit. Sophocles, bro. Like it. Yeah. So that's a rhetorical appeal they're making in terms of the credibility, for sure. But that's how it works. It's not just the quotation, it's the fact that it's him, and it's the fact that it's how they deliver it. Okay? So ancient Greek thinker, historical figure, it's almost like revealed is the word I would use, right? It gets revealed that that's a thing he said, apparently. So we're talking about credibility here. Good. What else might we talk about? We're just going to build a little bit of a menu here. Again, you can talk about the context, you can talk about the quotation itself. Does anything strike you guys as interesting here?
I mean, it's just building up a theme that's brought up in the movie, like
How so?
as that, while technology is great, it's
Vast.
simultaneously a utopia and dystopia.
This is for sure, turns out, like almost like a thesis of the movie.
There's a quote from the book, from the movie I've watched already.
Yeah.
Like it's simultaneously like a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah. So it turns out as you watch the film that this kind of comes to pass, right? Like it's like, oh, that's what they meant when they opened with the... So now what we're kind of doing, and we're going to talk more about the quotation to do this, but we're kind of joining this quotation from this guy to the whole project of the documentary. Is that fair to say? So the next question is, can we talk about these two items together? The credibility that they try to bring to bear, right, from the jump with Sophocles. How does that play for the movie to open that way? Because we just talked a lot about how credible Sophocles seems, because he's very dead, Greek, and all that stuff. What does that do for the movie, though? Do you think? What might they be trying to do by invoking Sophocles? Why bring him up?
Hopefully borrow some of his credibility for the film.
Good. I think it's a pretty blatant attempt. If you open, and look, this is a very, very old move in terms of literature. You open with a quotation from somebody, usually somebody that's pretty well known, and you're trying to set the tone in a way for your text, whatever it is. And in this case, they're like, we're gonna go all the way back to Sophocles and say, yeah, we see something he saw. Like yeah. So we're kind of borrowing.
Also,
Yes, sir.
also that it's like an old concept.
Good. Not an entirely new problem, right? Which is interesting. Why? Why might that be an interesting point to make? Given what happens in the rest of the film. You could easily think what about most of this movie if it comes to whose problem this is.
Like ours.
This is a brand new problem. I just told you, I remember when I got my first phone, first smartphone. I had a phone before that, but there's nothing you would recognize. We used T9 to text, if you know what that is. Lost my train of thought. I don't remember that piece of shit phone. But you would think these are brand new problems, and in some ways they are. But again, the movie opens with a dude who's been dead for a very, very long time, and something was going on with him that felt similar, right? So it's not entirely new. And if we've had it kicking around for thousands of years, maybe this is just an issue that we've always grappled with in different forms, right? Which in a way, I think could bring you back around to credibility again. Now we're not just talking about Sophocles borrowing his credibility, which is absolutely true. But if the idea itself worked in his time, and I think could easily transfer to ours, then the question becomes, is this just a part of being a human being, right? Is it just a part of life? And again, that leads some credence to what they say through the rest of the movie, I think. That is one way to, by the way, I just sketched out some notes you would use, sentences, hopefully. That's how body paragraphs happen, okay? I'm gonna keep reminding you of this because you guys are gonna keep fighting me. If you cite evidence, in this case a quotation, because that's what your homework is, you give me some good context, because this helps you also. You have so much to talk about when it comes to making your argument. So if you're ever in that place where you're like, I don't know what to say, I don't have anything, there's a good chance you either haven't worked much with your evidence or your context sucks. For instance, the bare minimum that some of you will hit me with. That's true. You missed this, which matters. The film opens with it. And if we're going to be really technical as one of these, right? Because again, he's very dead. But either way, you lose ammunition when it comes to your argument when you do that. Okay? So I'm telling you, this is better. Gives you more to work with. And then you can dive in. We haven't even done this. The quotation itself. I mean, some of the more important language, I want to move on so we can talk about other things. Vast is interesting. Mortals is very interesting. I'm going to stop there for a second. What's interesting about mortals? Who's he talking about, first of all? Us. I don't know if you knew this, but we don't get called mortals a lot, right? I didn't really get thrown around. What does it probably mean, especially if a dude like Sophocles is talking about mortals? What's he probably at least a little bit thinking about? Huh? Gods and shit. Yeah. Because that's what those people did. They thought about it all the time. Talked about it all the time. And if he's talking about mortals, then he's also probably in some way thinking about people that aren't mortal. Those are gods. So again, more of that gravitas. More of that like just heavy material, right? Seeing about gods and goddesses and what it is to be mortal. And then curse. Not consequence. In this context, they kind of mean the same thing, right? They mean the same thing, roughly. How different would this be? Nothing vast enters the life of mortals without consequence. And you're like, I mean, that sounds good. But again, we know what consequences are. I said before class, if all I did was play video games, eventually I'd lose my job. At that point, family situation gets a little rough, right? There's consequences, but we know what those are. Curse, that's different. I was on safari and I found a monkey toe and I brought it home and now my dog's dead. That feels like a curse. That's different. That's bigger than us. Okay? Yeah. Okay. So that is the very start to what you can do with a single quotation. If contextualized properly, and then of course you got the quotation marks and the citation and all that. Anything else stood out to you? Oh, I'm gonna ask real quick because I have no access to a clock in here. What time is it?
10:14.
10:14? Oh, we got half an hour. Sweet. Yes, ma'am.
Can I go to the restroom and also where is it?
You don't have to ask.
Okay.
If you go out that door and you go left and just keep your eye on the right, there's gonna be an alcove that has bathrooms in it.
Alright, thanks.
Sweet. It's just funny to me because I thought you had like an observation. You're like, oh, by the way, this is, oh, bodily functions. Other things you guys noticed from the opening scene of the film? Anything at all?
I like how they did like the pre-roll before the actual cut to scene. If that
Yeah.
makes sense. Where the dude's like checking his phone.
Tristan. And again, it may not stand out to you the first time you watch it, but especially if you watch it again, the very first thing he does, they're like, I can't quite remember what they say to him off camera, like, you good or whatever, and he's just like, his phone goes off, and then, especially on the second viewing, you're like, oh, that had to have happened, and they're like, that's staying in the movie.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Here and then here.
Whenever they asked them what they thought the problem was,
Oh, yeah.
and they just,
First woman kind of goes, I can't believe you fucking asked me that. Second guy, again, has problems. Third guy definitely seems like he has an answer, but his problem is like it's too big, too fast. And then Tristan just laughs. I love the fact that Tristan goes, okay. What's the problem? Good. And we're gonna lay some of these out and we'll talk about it. What was yours?
It kind of like states all their previous job titles.
Dude, I heard somebody say something. Some of these guys are legit heavy hitters. It's easy to miss because it's like jargon. The guy, it looks like he's in front of like a big pantry or something. I don't know what's behind him. That dude was the president of Pinterest. I know you may not use Pinterest. That's a big fucking deal. And he was head of monetization for Facebook for 5 years. What? That's crazy. How he's not living in a spaceship right now, I don't know. That's crazy. One dude, my favorite, and again, you don't know this the first time you watch it, it's not going to you. But the French guy, Guillaume, I think is how you would pronounce it, in the white shirt, and they're lint brushing him, you know, because he's in a fucking white shirt. He's so modest. I don't remember what he says in the opening scene, but later you find out he invented the algorithm. You're like, why don't you open with that? That's very different. He's just like, I worked at, YouTube. Yeah, what about, we'll pause here for a second, what about all the things these people have done? Lends a good bit of what?
Credibility.
For sure. Holy shit. If nothing else, these people know way more about everything they're about to talk about than we do. Like, we may have thoughts, but no. This is very much a like, you just shut up and listen type of thing. Like, these guys know what they're talking about. For sure. For sure. What was yours?
Oh, I was gonna say like
Yeah.
the juxtaposition of like them being like nervous to like shoot,
Oh my god.
and then being extremely like qualified in what they're about to talk about.
Yeah. Well, one guy, and again, this wouldn't be why everyone is nervous. Some people just don't like being on camera, right? Like, but the one dude, and I'm sure this will stand out. There's one guy in particular who's very nervous. Why?
said he talked to lawyers.
Lawyers for 8 months. Why? Why might he be talking to lawyers for 8
It's
months?
such a liability. Like, nobody's trying to get sued.
Like, don't piss off Google or Facebook. Are you kidding me? Wow. Yeah, that would be and all of a sudden now, I mean, let's pause there for a second. We're talking a lot about credibility, and you can talk about credibility, especially again when you think about their jobs and their experience, for sure. But in this particular moment, the lawyer business, that's not really credibility, right? What is that? What happens in that moment when he says, very nervously. This is why I was talking to lawyers for like 8 months, you know, like.
When you about to drop some real stuff.
It,
I don't know.
no, that's fine. So on the one, if we still want to talk about credibility a little bit, it kind of leads you to think that whatever he's going to say is vital information, is important. Could anything that could upset somebody else probably matters. Okay? Whether it's true or not could be a different question, but it matters, right? For sure. And again, if you're going to say, well, who's he upsetting? Oh, Google. Well, that probably matters a lot. It's probably worth several $1 billion. Good. What else, though? How else? What other kind of appeals might it be making here? Yeah.
I think like with the editing and the music,
Yeah.
this kind of ominous tone is setting.
It's weird. It feels like The Social Network almost in terms of the music. Trent Reznor did the music for that movie, Nine Inch Nails. I don't know if that means anything to any of you. But it has like a low-key industrial vibe to the music. Yeah, and again, it's very ominous. Especially in the scene. I mean, it's doing it the whole time. I don't know if you noticed, but in the moment when the guy's talking about lawyers, adds just a little bit of foreboding, right? Good. What about the lawyers thing specifically? I know I'm harping on this a little bit, but that's kind of my job.
It makes it feel like what they're doing and what they're going to say is kind of dangerous, and maybe they
Yeah.
like not something that should be, or like okay, they could get in trouble with this or whatever.
And what does that do to you as an audience member? We're very close.
Scares you.
Good. Right? Like, why does it scare you? By the way, all of this, I'm not writing it on the board for time's sake. You would break this down and this is when you're starting to make a rhetorical analysis, okay? Why does it scare you, do you think?
You're like scared for like your future, like what they're talking about or something.
Well, due to like how, I hate to use this word, we've thrown it around a lot, how serious it is. I mean, yeah. I was looking for a different word, but that's part of it for sure. Why else might it scare you when he starts talking about lawyers? Do anybody else feel like a little twinge at anything?
Like you might be in danger.
Yeah. I mean, look, nobody's gonna come like hitman this guy, probably.
That you know of.
Probably.
We should look.
But they can still ruin your fucking life. They could make you wish they sent a hitman. You know what I'm saying? Like, so when we another way to think about it is the point I'm making. When we say we're scared, we're kind of scared for him a little bit, and it's kind of weirdly funny because he's joking about it, right? But he's also not. He's also not joking. So the point I'm making, you feel a little bit for that guy just in that moment. Like whatever he has to say, it must be important, it must be significant. We can talk about that. But we can also talk about the human element, the fact that he's just a dude. And on some level, right in front of us, he's gonna maybe throw a middle finger up to big tech, right? So that's I don't want to even invoke that fucking triangle. Leave the triangle at home. But that's an emotional appeal. They're talking you one human to another now. You may not understand everything in the movie, because it goes kind of fast sometimes. They talk about a lot of things. You may even feel like some of it doesn't really touch you. Like, I don't use my phone. Like, great, you're the only person. But moments like this is just one human being feeling things to another human being feeling things. That's a different kind of rhetorical appeal, okay? And for sure, I think that's going on here with the lawyer's business.
I feel like it was going on like the entire opening.
Yeah. I just feel like it's really strong right there.
Oh yeah, okay.
But you're going to cite something else. Go ahead.
I wasn't gonna cite anything. I was just saying like the entire opening where they're like doing like the take. It's like humanizing them.
How so? For sure it is. What makes them seem like human beings in this opening, do you think?
They're all nervous.
They're all nervous, and none of them are, and again, I think you talked about this initially, if I'm not mistaken. We don't open with super put together shots. Like the Bailey woman has the thing, and Tristan is doing a lot of he's doing this on his
Yes.
What's that telling you about him?
He's nervous.
Yeah, his palms are sweaty. Mom spaghetti, you get it. But he's doing this.
He's doing his fascias, bro.
Yeah, but like it's for sure humanizing all these people, right? And they could be nervous because of what they're going to talk about. They could be nervous because they're on camera. And they're just people. We're about to launch into this huge technical discussion and like society altering whatever, but it's just people telling you these things. So yes, it humanizes them, which is a different kind of rhetorical appeal again. Very good. What time is it, by the way? I'm sorry.
10:23.
Sweet. All right, let's move on. We're gonna watch the next bit. This picks up right where we left off for those of you at home. And we're gonna watch to, I believe, 5:50, thereabouts. We're gonna watch until the title comes up. Anything you guys noticed in that second scene of the film, I suppose? Yes?
The guy that made Twitter said that they had no idea 12 years ago.
That it would turn into this.
Yeah.
And again, that guy, in some ways, rightfully, Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter up until very recently, gets a lot of flack. And it's hard to feel bad for a billionaire, too. But I also kind of believe him, in that moment. He's like, none of us thought, Twitter would be, that's kind of fair. Who could have thought, oh, it would turn into this thing? Because, what is it fundamentally? It's a stupid public messaging app. That's all it is.
It's an argument board.
It's what?
It's an argument board.
Well, yeah. But no, it turned into this much bigger thing. And I think kind of what he's alluding to, and this is where we get into argument, right? Like, what is he arguing and how is he doing it? I think he's kind of implying it's not all his fault. It's not all Twitter's fault that it's turned into this thing where, like, white supremacists and fucking terrorists, and they showed ISIS at one point. It's not really their fault that it just snowballed into this thing that, like, I guess if they can't control it, then what would the upshot be? Who can? Nobody. Yeah, and it's how's that working on you rhetorically as an audience member, as a viewer? If the guy who's in charge, who's at the controls goes, dude, I didn't know it would be like that. What does that do to you? What thoughts into your mind?
It's kind of shocking.
It's kind of like shit. Yeah, a little bit. It smacks of Sophocles, right? All of a sudden, it's like that seems, if he can't do it, and if all the people around him can't do it, it's bigger than we ever could have imagined, right? Yeah, for sure. We're almost out of time right now. What time is it, by the way?
Oh, I got a notification.
Okay.
It was 10:30.
29.
That's even better, thank you. Well, because that's so perfect for what we're, now it's on your wrist. Anyway.
What do you think on the wrist technology?
Yeah, I got a hoop on, so a hoop on doesn't say much. What else stood out to you guys? Yeah.
I feel like with all the showing all the newsreels and stuff.
Yeah.
Like bringing it into the real world and showing it felt like with how rapid fire it was, like it couldn't fit all of what it wanted to say in that.
That's one way to talk about it, with how widespread it is, constant it is. Well, and it's also, the other way I would think about the news stuff, because it is a lot really fast, it's, I think a lot of it's stuff you guys are used to, you've heard, right? The Snapchat dysmorphia thing has got to be, I think, for a lot of you, somebody's like, do you feel like you should look like a filter? Like So the point I'm making here, on the one hand, those are real issues that are like an everyday occurrence now, right? But on the flip side, especially for you guys, because you view it, I was talking to somebody before the class started, I watch this movie differently. I'm a dad with kids who, relatively soon, are gonna be online and doing it. I'm fucking scared shitless for them. I'm fine. And if I'm not, I'll be dead soon. So who cares? But for them, I'm worried for them. When you guys watch it, you're worried about you, right? And I say that to say, with all the news stuff, the other way to possibly take it is, these are stories you've heard, And sometimes it can have like an after-school special kind of vibe where you're like, I know, it's bad for me, shut up. If the whole documentary were that way, but it's kind of cool too, because in this scene, we haven't even talked about this yet. What's it spliced with? It's like news, 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 and then what?
Just kind of like fake narratives or that they're gonna end up.
Yeah, dramatization, right? Where it kind of plays out what could happen, I suppose, in a family. And they're just kind of talking like a family. Like, I think it's kind of nice to, when the son sits down, the dad is like, "Oop, what's up?" He gets a notification, right? They're kind of, what happens with the family? I want to talk about them at least a little bit because I know we're going to be short on time soon. Does anything happen in that? Yeah.
Like the newsreel mentions tweens on TikTok, and then immediately cuts to, you know, the family, and then there's the little sister who's on social media.
Yeah. She's on basically, I mean, all of it's fake, because again, if they had anything that was Instagram, they would get sued to hell and back. But she's basically on Instagram, right? She's just scrolling.
And then there's like the antithesis, which is the older sister who's like, fuck social media.
Yeah. She's like supposed to be, I guess, like the voice of reason or whatever in the movie. And of course, by the end, she gets wrapped up in it anyway. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. You're supposed to have watched it.
Doctors.
Do what?
Call them late adopters.
It's gonna get you anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, yeah. I mean, but anyway, so, the other thing about Isla. Did anything else happen in that moment? Anything specific? Again, I want you thinking about specific elements. What's up?
Depression.
They talk about Snapchat dysmorphia too, like when they cut to her and you see her on Instagram, and you see later in a scene that we probably will talk about in a later class, when she's having this moment like with her ears. It's like, that's so fucked up. And it's like, that for sure happens, right? Yes. So there's a connection made between the news stories and the family. Like, you see these big stories, and sometimes it can feel like it doesn't really connect to my life, right? But then you see this family, like, it connects to some people, right? Some people experience these things, for sure. More specific than that, what happens? I notice it probably because, again, I have kids, but I know some of you saw this. When the family's talking, and Isla's on her phone, something else happens.
She tells her to get off, something like
Set the
that.
table.
Go set the table.
Yeah.
What does Isla do?
Ignore her.
Then she scrolls. Dude, I hate to say it like this, but in my day, when I was a kid, again, granted, there was nothing I was scrolling on, but I had like Super NES, you know, like that. If my parents were like, go set the table, and I was like, I want to beat Mario first. I'm like, I'm going to beat you first. What are you talking about? Right? Like, that's a moment. That's a moment. And look, what does her mom ask her to do? Set the table? What does that take, 20 seconds? That's nothing. And it's so they can all sit down and have a family dinner, because again, you find out later she's trying to have them more together because they haven't been, because they're separated by the phone, blah, blah, blah. And you see it in this first scene with the family. They're not really talking to each other, especially Isla. Isla is totally like siloed off from everybody else. What time is it?
10:35.
You bastards. You're freaking me out. Look, I have no way to know. I guess I could now because I turned some stuff off. I'm watching you. You're all packing up. It's 10 minutes. Guys. Anyway, Jesus, where were we? What's the point of that moment? How might we talk about the moment when Isla is just sitting there in her hat? I don't know why that stands out to me. She's on her phone, and her mom's like, hey, could you do a thing for me? I gave you life. And she's like...
I guess it's just because she's like enveloped in her own world, not...
So she's so siloed off.
Yeah.
What'd you say? She's disconnected from her family. And again, these are some of the bigger ideas from the film. How can we talk about that rhetorically? And what I mean here, I'm trying to like kind of sum up what we've done today. Part of what you want to do is think about whatever argument they're trying to make, okay? And that's what we've done here. Like, she's disconnected, she's kind of shut off from her family, for sure.
The other thing you want to try to do is, to the best of your ability, think about how they're making that argument, okay? So part of it is they're just showing it, right? You just see it on the screen. You see her go, no, right? And just do that, okay? Does it matter, for instance, that her mom says it and she just scrolls, right? And if so, how could we talk about that? Like, again, what's the effect of her mom asking her to do a super low stakes thing, and she says nothing, and she just scrolls on her phone? What does that do to you up here? What thoughts maybe occur? What feelings?
Depressed.
My butt would have got whooped.
I mean, that's a little strong for the first scene. That's a little strong for the first scene. What'd you say?
My butt would have got whooped.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's varies from person to person, but yeah, it would not have gone well for me. Well, again, whatever it was, right? Again, mine was probably like Super Nintendo. It would not have gone well for me. What's up?
Seems like a realistic situation.
It seems entirely plausible, for sure. And again, I get that's part of what you guys are talking about too. Is not only is she disconnected by umbrella term technology here, but she's disconnected in a way that feels realistic. Feels totally like this probably happens millions of times a day, right? Yeah. Does it? Oh, go ahead.
I mean, it appeals to your emotions, right?
Perhaps.
Like how you relate to it.
Okay, good. So maybe that's what we're getting at here is not, because it's realistic, because it seems almost mundane, right? This thing happens all the time, right? That it's not just believable, but more importantly, you can connect to it. Like, you may not have done it yourself, but you totally envision a world where all the people you know have done it, right? Like, their mom has asked them to do a thing, they're like, but I'm updating my status, or whatever type of thing you're doing. Yeah. Relating to a text, especially a documentary that's trying to make like blatant arguments to you, can be pretty powerful. Yeah, for sure. Anything else stood out to you guys? We're almost done, as you well know.
Are you fishing for something? Or okay. I just want to make sure.
I'll occasionally do that, but I'm usually pretty open about it. Look, especially first day, all I want you guys taking away from today is there's a ton of stuff you can pull from this documentary. There's a ton. But when you pull it, you need to be specific and you need to dive into it in the way that we, like, again, anything you pull, you can go into it like this, okay? But I just want to, as best we can here with the little time left, anything else you guys saw? Anything at all stood out to you? From anything we watched, doesn't even have to be the second scene. No.
I don't know.
They were eating breakfast or whatever, or I don't know, they were at a table eating or something.
Yeah.
They weren't even talking at all. They were just.
Yeah. Well, again, Mom addresses that later in the film. But yeah, the kid sits down and he's setting the table. I guess maybe he's getting the food, or maybe Isla's supposed to get the silverware. I don't know. But yeah, he's right in front of the dad, and the dad's like, looking at this. So that's kind of interesting because later you see Isla is like blatantly disconnected. But it pretty, I think, kind of under the radar makes the point that dad is too. That's a good catch. I hadn't really considered that, but that's fair. That it's not just the kind of usual suspects, right? If you have a 12-ish-year-old sibling, they're for sure the one where you're like, they don't listen to anything. They're all their Instagrams and TikTok. But dad's doing it too, with the old people version. Yeah.
My email.
Yeah. All right. I guess you gave me the sacrificial one, so I appreciate it. Your homework. It's on the syllabus, but we've been doing it this whole time, basically. 2 quotations. We're going to dig more into the other thing you can do next time, which is this. This is a visual medium, so it's not just quotations, okay? I mentioned a while ago, one of my favorite moments in the early part of the film, when they ask what the problem is, Tristan just laughs. That's amazing. That's amazing that they start their movie with, hey, there's a problem. Let's ask this guy that knows about it. And he just goes, that's hilarious to me. You can't quote that. You see what I'm saying? There's no way to quote that, so you have to describe it. That's a different thing. We'll do that next time, okay? For homework, 2 quotations. It can be from any part of the movie. Some people get confused here. It doesn't have to be from the opening, okay? Any part of the movie, somebody said a thing, you thought it was interesting for some reason. I want it correctly integrated into a sentence, okay? And cited. You do that twice. I get it on the one hand, but on the other, come on, man. Anyway, integrated and cited, okay? If you want to go further and do some of this, that can only help the future you. But for homework, all you're required to do is this, this, and this. You do that twice. Make sense? All right, I'll see you next time. Thank you.